Hello and welcome. We are at Beaver Dam Park, and you can actually see the sign behind me in East Brunswick, New Jersey. Now, if you really were to take a look at the sign carefully, it is a Superfund site. So it is being treated currently by the EPA. Let me explain why I've come here and my connection to this place. So first of all, this is a place that, in part, when I was a kid, I would go here, and I did have friends that would fish in the water here. What this is, being a Superfund site, and Superfund is actually the name, not of the act that designates it a polluted area, but it's a name for the funds set aside to clean up areas like this. It's really CERCLA that sets everything in motion, where companies are liable and they have to clean up, and we try to hold them accountable. But this used to be a place with a flooring factory where they had toluene and some other VOCs and arsenic, and it got into the groundwater. It got into the soil. And one of the first things they did after discovering that they were also putting barrels of waste here was to fence it off. Eventually, they actually did that. It took a little too long, in my opinion, to do that. And then after they did that, they remediated, cleaned up. And this is a good example of remediation that's put to an end use. It's still not completely done. Please be aware of that. So I'm going to see what's here as I go along, and talk a little bit as well about anything that we may see. But really the main reason I'm here is to show you this place that was remediated. It's still being remediated. It has limited use to the public in certain locations where they allow us, but that's not all of this that's open. It's only some of it that's open at the moment. And they're going to continue to clean the groundwater. They've adjusted that and gone to phase 2 in their cleanup, but they've adjusted the groundwater. They've actually found more pollutants than they thought at first. And also they've scraped off a lot of the soil. So we'll talk as we go along. Here's the pond, which is really also connected to other waterways, including a creek in the back, a little stream in the back that I know of, even crosses the road at a point. And you can see some ring-necked ducks in there if you look very carefully. They're in the back. According to the local newspaper here, I'm going to go up the trail a bit. They do say that there's a beaver. So if we happen to see evidence of the beaver, I will show you that as well. I don't know of it, but we'll see. You'll note that the trail here is gravel, which is good for water infiltration from the rain, and we really don't want puddles of water, especially if they could be polluted. One thing they seem to be doing here is it says it's a wetland mitigation project, which is happening over here. And this could be, in this case, I'm assuming what they mean by that is oftentimes if you build back, if you're a company that has destroyed some wetland, if you build back some wetland, you can get credit for that because you're not supposed to really destroy any wetlands. That's not how we do things anymore. There are laws against that. So one way to recoup that is to build new ones. Or maybe they're just cleaning up the old one that already was here, because this was a wetland. I can tell you that from my personal experience. And what you see over on the sides, unfortunately, is Phragmites. And these are quite large stalks. So we're talking about the invasive form of Phragmites, which is really not what we try to go for when we try to make a proper, well-functioning wetlands in this area. But that is what we have. and here's the back area. No, that just is the name of the company. I was here. It was Freed Industries. We always called it Freed's. It's a Superfund site, and the sign for the project with the EPA. More signs for wetland mitigation, which could well mean mitigation banking. I think that might be the case, but again, it could just be the cleanup itself. I'm not entirely sure. Interesting areas like this, if you're talking about just from a wildlife standpoint, you're a little bit removed from the wetland, kind of on the edge of it. You have some fencing. It's good for some types of birds, for example, like sparrows might really like this area. I remember when I was a kid that there were a number of birds who really looked much different, by the way. And I was usually down further away from the pond than here, more towards the other end of this park. But it was good for birds. We had red poles and all sorts of things, and bobwhite many years ago. But be interesting to see what comes here now. Again, still not clean. That is the one thing I will keep saying. But supposedly, according to the EPA, as long as we don't get wet, like stepping in water and such, and stay on the paths, and we should be fine. So you can see this is a big open marshland. Well, not really big. Let me say that a little bit differently. A big chunk of this is an open marshland, and with it being a wetland, with it being a marshland like this, if you had the natural soils that would exist in an area like this, they'd be hydric, and some of this has been wetlands for quite some time, and I'm going to guarantee I'm not going to go in there and really root around, but is definitely, I would assume, hydric, but not below my feet. This is all stuff that was brought in. This is topsoil that was added to this area, and you can see the heron taking off, maybe? If you look carefully, flying over there. Great blue heron. But again, this is connected to a water body that naturally occurs here, and some of this hydrologically has been here for quite some time, and some of it is a little bit different than I remember. So the landscape has been altered. You can see all of the soil around the paths. That has all been brought in. I remember it being sandier at one point in the areas that were away from water. Don't know how natural that was either, considering there was the industry here, and some of that may have been for their trucks and whatnot, and I don't know. We do have quite a bit of sandy soil around here. That is true. When you are in the wetlands, it's going to be hydric, it's going to be more muddy and clay-like, and that is also true. The hydrology is important when you're talking about cleanup. Wetlands clean the water themselves naturally. That's what they do. They purify water. It's part of what they do. Making sure that the water is flowing properly, I guess, must be part of what the EPA is doing in this spot. You'll see a raft of sticks over there, so don't know what that could be. That is not reminiscent of beaver activity, although it could be. I haven't really seen anything yet. I am on the lookout. If that happens to be, then I will be wrong. They do all sorts of weird things with sticks, but I'm not seeing it so far. Now here's what the land actually looked like before, in the before times. And what you can see are some pitch pines. We're not that far from the Pine Barrens, although we really are. There are some pitch pines in this area, and we have sandy soil if you take a look at that. This is what I remember. You know, we have quite a few pine needles on the ground, some leaf litter as well, because it's not really the Pine Barrens. We are north of that, but there's some pitch pine growth that continues up until this area, and we're kind of on the boundary of that, New Jersey, the northern boundary of the very small patches that come up this area. And then we did even back in the old days, have quite a bit of phragmites and marshland kind of interspersed with it. So you can see some white oak, you can see some pitch pines, see some cedar. You know, these are all, these have been here for quite some time. And I see some wide open areas as well, and some more paths, and we'll go down them. So I still really haven't seen much evidence of beavers. There are a couple of trees that look like they possibly could have been taken down by beavers, but I mean, it was a little jagged for chainsaw, but honestly, it wasn't as jagged as, but it was, there were small trees, so it's hard to tell, but seriously, not much. If there is any activity and there's plenty of land, I mean, there's a possibility that somewhere in the back we can't get to would have that, but what I have seen are a number of these potentially these locked up pipes, which I'm guessing are used for the EPA for testing the groundwater, to see if it's getting any cleaner, whatnot. Not entirely sure, but just thought I would put that on video as well. Bit more background as I walk further down this trail. This is further away from on my return, but further away from the pond than on my way out. Could not complete the quote-unquote loop because it was not complete. There was a big hole there and was not about to go through the water in the Superfund site. Ooh, these are wonderful. Those are tires. Yay. Actually, wildlife can use tires, and it's not the worst thing possible. Snakes might like that. Lots of other things. If we're on the shore, sometimes they use them for turns, which is wonderful, but we don't have them here in the middle of the woods. So anyway, we're not at the beach. That's just not cleaning up very well. That's what that really comes down to, but again, not the worst possibility. There are a number of houses on the side over there, not that far away from the Superfund site. Always drove me crazy. We've known that this place has been polluted since, and they've been cleaning it up for quite some time now, because it's been known at least since the mid-'80s that this is not the safest place in the world. It wasn't really made too public until the 90s. That's part of my complaint. But it has been remediated for quite some time now, so that's why they consider it a success story if you go with the EPA website and the East Brunswick website, which at least is partly correct. So, but I think we're getting to the parking lot, which is good. And this will be the trail away from the pond, getting back there. Because I see cars, and probably my own. All right. Now here's what the land actually looked like before, in the before times. And what you can see are some pitch pines. We're not that far from the Pine Barrens, although we really are. There are some pitch pines in this area, and we have sandy soil. If you take a look at that, this is what I remember. You know, we have quite a few pine needles on the ground, some leaf litter as well, because it's not really the Pine Barrens. We are north of that, but there's some pitch pine growth that continues up until this area, and we're kind of on the boundary of that New Jersey, the northern boundary of the very small patches that come up this area. And then we did, even back in the old days, have quite a bit of phragmites and marshland kind of interspersed with it. So you can see some white oak, you can see some pitch pines, see some cedar. You know, these are all, these have been here for quite some time. And I see some wide open areas as well, and some more paths, and we'll go down them.